All right. Well, I want to welcome Jodi to the show. Thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. So I'm wondering if we can start before we're going to dive into mindfulness today, which is an awesome topic. Can you maybe just tell everybody a little bit about yourself and your story?
Sure. I've been a psychotherapist for over 20 years, but I think I came to that practice because of some intense feelings of anxiety and depression when I was growing up. I felt so alone. And I noticed in high school when I was helping my friends, people are always going through stuff. So there was a lot of people going through things, but I felt a sense of connection in those times of healing for myself as I was with them. And I think that led me to social work school and into this career. But I really didn't cure my anxiety until I was in my late 20s. I was I was doing it and helping people with that when I had it myself. Then I kind of committed. I could tell the story if you want, but we have so much other stuff to talk about today, how I cured my anxiety and then wrote about the 6 steps. So I cured it. And then I help all my clients for the last, the next 20 years, I help people overcome their anxiety, and it works.
Yeah, which is awesome. And I think when you have your own anxiety, because I'm very similar to you, I didn't realize I had anxiety until I didn't realize I had social anxiety until I was in my 40s and I had to promote my book. And then I was like, oh my gosh, this is so anxiety producing. And then it led me to realize like how acute my anxiety is. So I think when we have our own anxiety, we're better clinicians because we're able to help people from a place of understanding that you really don't get otherwise.
Absolutely. I mean, it makes such a difference to the people that I work with that I get it. They just want, because you feel so different and so misunderstood and so like confused yourself about what's happening. I mean, anxiety is so mysterious in a lot of ways. It's just, there's so many whys out there. And when you come to someone who really gets it, I don't know, that they compare me to other therapists who haven't gotten it. And it's just like night and day for them. They feel so comfortable and not so alone, but also like hope.
Yeah.
Like hope, like if you could do it or anyone could do it, then people could do it.
Yeah.
Because sometimes the traditional mental health is like, you just have to maintain it. You just have to manage it. Like this is something you'll have forever. Don't tell anyone with anxiety that this is something that you'll have forever. You just have to manage it. That is going to freak them out. It's a terrible thing to say.
Yeah.
It's not true. I mean, those people say it because they think it's true. Those other practitioners, but
Yeah, totally agree. All right, let's talk about mindfulness.
Sure.
It's something I haven't talked about before on my YouTube channel or on my podcast. I haven't even written about it on my website. So this is great information.
Awesome. Yeah. Do you use it?
I'm trying. And I use it in my practice. I just haven't really talked about it. So,
okay.
But I think that you have more expertise in this area and you have a lot to offer. So could we start with, a lot of times when I try to introduce this like concept in my therapy practice, parents want to know and kids want to know, like, what are you talking about? What is mindfulness? So let's start with the basics. How would you
it's funny because I barely even use the word. I mean, I do because other people could relate to it. But when I'm trying to teach people, what I do in my work is, a lot of people teach skills to get over anxiety. And what I do that's different than other people's, I take down the power of anxiety first. But when I think about mindfulness, I think about taking your attention on something that is not helpful to you and to something that you prefer. Prefer is just an easy term, but it kind of covers all the bases. Something that you'd rather focus on. So a lot of people think meditation is clearing the mind. If you have anxiety, that's too much and too hard. But mindfulness is being able to take your attention from wherever it is, because our attention is going to go all the time. So mindfulness is a practice of bringing that intention with no judgment at all onto something you prefer to think about. Mm-hmm. So it could be thinking about something grateful. It could be, it could be like with children, they could do an activity. And so it's not about like sitting there and meditating. You could play with clay and you could be in the moment and be pressing the clay and like feel the clay and like in the moment, stay in the clay. Like that present moment saying, it gives them something to focus on outside that monkey mind. That's where the anxiety or the OCD lies. It's in there worrying about something in the future, right? And so you want to bring them back to the present moment. And so instead of inviting them to this whole big concept, you have them color or have them play with Play-Doh or lie on the blanket and look at the clouds and see if you could see the dog. Is that a dog? What do you see in the clouds? Like, that's a great mindfulness practice that obviously kids could do. We've been doing it for a really long time.
Yeah. And I think that's a good point, because a lot of times when I say mindfulness, or parents will ask me, are you going to teach mindfulness to my kids? Or people talk about it online. They do feel like I had one boy last week and he goes, you're not going to tell me I have to meditate, are you? Because that's not going to work. And I get it as an anxious person.
People are scared to meditate. It's such a threat, thinking you have to clear your mind because that anxiety is going to swoop right in.
It is scary and it's hard. It's a really hard concept, I think. So what I'm hearing you say is mindfulness is more just about kind of refocusing. And it's interesting because I almost think of, when I talk about mindfulness, I think of, like, you're talking about two different things to me, which is interesting that you're putting it all into mindfulness, which is helpful to see, because I talk about refocusing. So we're accepting the anxiety or OCD, and then we're refocusing. We're not going to just stand under the cloud. We're going to refocus our attention. And then with mindfulness, I talk about more like grounding, like really feel the water or really feel the food that you're eating, or like more about being in the now.
Yeah, but the really feeling the water and the really feeling that is focusing on giving your attention to the water. I like that refocus. Focus, it might be a little clinical or something, or educational, but give your attention from one thing to another thing. They are the same.
Yeah.
They are the same. So, because they're up in their head thinking about what if that happens, what if that happens, what if that happens, and you want them to be in the present, feeling the water.
Right.
Or, an exercise I do with parents and kids is they so they put their hand on the child's back, and the child breathes and imagines the breath going into their mom's hand and back out. So it helps them do a deep breathing, but there's a connection.
Oh, I like
there's
that.
Something to focus on or give your attention to. I'm using the word focus as a description, as an action verb, something to give their attention to. So there's a lot of, and I don't use necessarily, you don't have to use that word meditation, because it does sometimes scare people, but we could do it. There's so many different ways to meditate. And really, you could do mindfulness. It's not something you practice once a day. Like, you could do it all through the day.
Yeah.
And with doing everything else you're doing, like, it doesn't have to, you don't like stop life and be mindful.
Yeah.
You could be in the present moment all day. And that's where happiness lies. It's like, the anxiety is like always worried about something happening in the future, and resentment is always worried about the past, and that influence us worried about the future. So if we stay in the past and the present, like, that's where our suffering is. I mean, This is too big for kids to understand, but adults can. But when you're in the present moment, like, in the exact present moment, there's no problem, because obviously you're safe, because you're not dead in this second. You don't know what the next second is going to hold, but and so that's where healing happens, is in the present. That doesn't mean we stay there. Our mind is always kind of reflecting and going back and forth, but we're practicing to keep coming back. And the more time we spend there, the better our emotional wellness is overall.
Yeah. And it's so good for everybody. I mean, it's good for our kids, and it's good for anyone. Because I know when you are living in the moment and you're really soaking it up, and you're not living in what's going to happen in the next hour or what's going to happen next week, you're so much more relaxed, and you're really enjoying that moment on a level that you would never if your mind wasn't really focusing. And I think this is a thing that kids could totally get if it was just taught to them on a very kid-friendly level. And even with the redirection, like, so my 6-year-old, she has a lot of school anxiety right now. That's what we're dealing with.
All right, talk to me.
Yeah. So doing all of my therapy, ninja tricks on her. And we just have a code word. So we talk a lot about acceptance. I'm actually making a YouTube video on that today. That should come out in a few days when this podcast is up, on just acceptance and refocus. And I do use the word refocus as kind of like a key word for her. So we talk about, you're going to wake up and you're going to feel nauseous. That's just what your worry cloud is going to do. That's what it does. But you're going to accept it and be like, yep, it's the morning. I have to go to school. I'm going to feel nauseous. But then we talk about refocus, which is just what you're talking about. I want her to go and watch a TV show. I want her to go and play with her brother. Like, I want her to be in the moment. But I don't have to explain all that. I just say to her, like, I was in the shower. She's knocking on the door. Mom, I'm nauseous. And I'm like shouting, of course you are. And then I just say one word, refocus. And because we've talked about it, she goes, okay, I'm going to go refocus.
I love it. And they're so easy when they're little.
Oh, I know. They're so wonderful.
When they're teens, they're like, it doesn't work.
Exactly. I know. You get a lot more.
Then later you see them doing it and it works. You just can't say anything. You know, they're like, it doesn't work. And I'm like, that's anxiety talking. I don't say that out loud, but to help myself. But that is brilliant. Takes me back to those times when they actually listen.
I know, it's so nice. So that is a good question though, because there are probably a lot of parents who are saying, how am I ever going to get my kids to do that? Like my Miss 6, she's super agreeable. And so she's easy to work with. My Miss 14, not so much. Right. So
I got a 14.
Do you?
So this is the thing, is that what parents need to keep in mind, because they feel like it's not working, whatever they're doing that feels like it's not working. But the way your child is responding to you is not a good judgment of what is working or not. Yeah. Because they're ingesting the skill. You're trying to teach them skills. You're trying to give them some tools, and they're great tools. But the kids are going, it's not going to work. Why do you always tell me that? My kids are like, stop therapizing me. You know, you probably get that, right?
Me too. Yeah.
And so, but later you see them doing it. And you know, what's really gratifying is one time I heard my 18-year-old telling my 14-year-old some of the skills he uses when he has anxiety. And I was like, who do you think that he does? But you can't say anything because you're just like, you pat yourself and you stay quiet. But you know, it's getting in there. And I've interviewed so many of my clients and families that I work with that this happens. And then the kid needs what their parents are saying them, even though they're protesting it verbally. The kids want it. When they're calm later, they can say, yes, I do want this. And yes, actually it's helpful. Even though I say it doesn't, it is actually helpful. And I'm actually using that. So after hearing, you know, that from the horse's mouth over and over again, that these teens, it is helpful, even though they're protesting, keep doing it. Then I really follow that guidance. I haven't heard the opposite, actually, that actually they're not helpful. Yeah. But, I mean, there's sometimes when kids say their parents aren't helpful, of course, you know, but not in this kind of sense. Yeah. It's always helpful. So keep that in mind, which is really hard because you're trying to help and you just want to help. And the kids are going, you're not helping. Yeah. And so you have to just keep in mind that that's not entirely true. They're just really desperate. And that's anxiety talking. Yeah. You know, exactly. That's anxiety trying to get you away because anxiety wants to stay in their life. Anxiety wants to keep bothering them. And you are a threat to anxiety. You are on your kid's side. And I think that's really important to keep in mind because we are like desperate to help them and we want to do something so bad and we're getting attacked, you know? So, so keep in mind that you are doing great and keep going and keep loving them. And it is, you don't see it till much, much later that it works, but it does.
So how, in the moment, how would you prompt them to kind of, focus their attention on something in the now?
Yeah, that's really interesting. One of my latest videos is parenting through a panic attack. And really the number one thing is distract them. I mean, you could talk about and decide about anxiety later when they're calmed down. Yeah. But when they're that freaked out, you really just want to take their focus, you know, take their attention off all the things that anxiety is telling them and put it on something else. Like you said, a show, like funny videos are probably my quickest go-to. Yeah. Because, you know, laughter and anxiety can't live the same moment together. And if you're laughing, and especially if you're laughing at characters that you know really well, you know, I mean, I know my go-to is like Friends, right? When I had anxiety, I would watch Friends because like I knew them so well that I could get hooked in the story really quickly, and then out of my mind.
Yeah.
So I tell this to kids about when they're trying to help their friends. Like, kids want to help their friends through panic attacks. And it's a lot of, they're not therapists. They're not all this stuff that they could take this heaviness on. I'm like, watch some funny videos. Be like, hey, I'm here to distract you. That's why I come on. And that's really the state where they should be at when they're teenagers and they want to help their friends, because everything else gets heavy. And I don't know if it's necessarily helpful to either of them.
Yeah.
But funny videos is yes for everybody. You know what I mean?
Totally. I think that's a great thing. And I think if you plan ahead for panic attacks, with the kids I work with, and with my 14-year-old who had a lot of panic attacks, we would just say, what are you going to do when you have a panic attack? So let's get to your Instagram feed, or let's make like a file in your photos that are really funny memes, or let's have some downloaded videos that you have available. And then we have this plan so that when you start having a panic attack, we talk about acceptance again. It's kind of a big thing. Yep, I'm having a panic attack. It's probably going to go on for about, 15, 20, 25 minutes.
Yep.
Emergency alarm has been hit, and it is what it is. And then it's like, okay, so you need to go and look at your pictures or whatever.
Yeah, that's great.
And so I think if they have a plan ahead of time, so you might get a little bit less resistance. I know with my 14-year-olds, we've had moments.
Depends on how much confidence they have in that plan. I mean, these plans work really well, but sometimes anxiety is like, but what if it doesn't work? Then it's scary to try, because what if it doesn't work? Anxiety just tries to like go around the corner. You have one plan, you're like, oh, good, we're better. And anxiety like tries to take you over here. It's really hard.
It is.
But it is sinking in, and just keep it up. And when they freak out like that, just be like, okay, try it. Or be like, let's take a walk, or let's go run an errand. Sometimes I just try to get my daughter out of here or something like that. And that works. Or cooking or coloring or, something that is in the present moment. If they have like a project, because it is mindful, and it's not like you're running away from everything and always keeping yourself busy, but that is sometimes what you do need when you're anxiety. Like, you need to engage your brain in something else. Anxiety is like a beacon for attention. And if you're engaged in something, it can't bother you. If you're reading a fiction book that you're really engaged in, sometimes even with my adult clients, I have them put earbuds in and listen to books on recorded books, because I almost have books on tape. Listen to recorded books, because it's like the voices in their head, and it takes that space up. Anxiety takes your brain space. You just got to take it back.
Yeah, I think it's so true. And, I think empowering your kids to come up with their own plan, so not having this pushback. So just being like, what do you want to do when you're having a panic attack? It's so funny, because you can have a billion great examples of options of what you can do. And if your child comes up with one of them, they're more likely to go with that one that they came up with than the billions of ideas that you came up with. And even in my practice, it's true. So I think getting your kids to generate their own ideas, and then not necessarily swooping in and rescuing them, but saying, you're having a panic attack. What do you want to do?
Exactly.
And so let them lead it. With the teenager, you might get a little bit less resistance when it's on them, that you're not there to swoop in and kind of reset them, that there are options, and you've already talked about it. What do they want to do?
Yeah. Yeah. And when they're little, I know sometimes it's a little easier when they're little, because I know a lot of your audience of people are little, the kids are little, they just need that reassurance, but it's modeling, so when you're saying it's going to be okay, it's always okay. And those kind of things, then they start to have your voice in their head after. And they're able to soothe themselves. So at first you're modeling that reassurance, and then they're going to take over for you. It's just like when people are mean to kids and say mean stuff, like then people take that on and start saying it to themselves. They do the good things too. Like, a lot of my clients have my voice in their head saying everything's going to be fine. You're doing great. That kind of thing. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm like in everybody's head. I love that, like Lucy on Peanuts. She's like, I wish everyone listened to me, But anyway, so it's not as like mysterious as you think. Mindfulness is about being in the present moment.
Yeah.
And so there's a million things you could do in the present moment, because you could really do anything in the present moment, right?
Yeah.
And so it could be something that they like. kick the ball around outside, take a walk the dog, play with the dog, teach the dog tricks, look at the clouds. Maybe that's not enough stuff. Maybe you could actually be mindful, watch TV, sorta, not really. I guess you're kind of, you're in the story of the TV. And if that's a conscious choice, you're in the story. It's like I'm pretty mindful when I watch TV.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm a story person.
Yeah.
So I'm in the story, and I'm like, I picture it, imagine it, and I'm not thinking anything else but that story.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in a way, it's like I'm in the present moment with that.
Yeah, I could see where that would be very mindful if you're really engaged in the story.
I mean, I'm not saying that's how you want to practice mindfulness, but you could do it all day. Be like, okay, I'm mindful. I do TV all day. But you could,
Yeah.
And when you're creating, when you're writing, when you're doing poetry, anything, when you're drawing, when you're painting, all of that could be done mindfully. And usually is.
And I think it's good to frame it and let your kids know. So I think a lot of times parents will say, like, just go distract yourself or just go get your mind on something else. And I think it's better to really frame it as this effective tool to say to explain it to them. And parents who listen to this, they have kids of all ages. So, the main ages are 8 to 18, I would say, with a few little ones. The name is a little misleading, but I think it's good to teach them like what you're doing, because I'll say to kids, when you're focusing, like everything that you just said, when we're focusing on what we're doing in the moment, our anxiety bully doesn't have time to wiggle in and watch the anxiety channel because you're focusing on other things. Right. So I think you might get a little bit more buy-in if you explain to your kids that, and this is what I'll say to kids, it's super simple. I know this is not rocket science. I'm going to tell you something and it's not going to rock your world. It is going to be so simple, but to do it, that's the tricky part.
Yeah. You think it's tricky, but it is pretty simple too. Once you get it, it's like anxiety needs brain space. Yeah. Use the brain space doing something else and anxiety can't get you.
Yeah.
It's like it is an easy concept. And so people, I'm like, I know someone who's really good and handy around the house, and the house is a wreck, and it could use a lot of TLC. And I'm like, do projects around the house. Yeah. And he's like, well, I just am so anxious. I don't feel like it. He sits on the couch. Worst thing you could do, just stay still and just think about the anxiety. Right. And then he got better. And I'm like, what did you do to get better? He's like, I just kept myself busy. I'm like, I said that for 6 months, but like, you just have to, the worst thing people do is like stop doing stuff. And that's what people tend to do when they have anxiety. Like kids just start quitting, like the soccer team, or they stop doing activity. They stop going to karate. And it's it makes it worse. They have just too much time to think about anxiety. And anxiety times is time where you want to be a little bit busier.
Yeah. Yep. Especially in panicky times, I think, for sure.
Because then there's no time for the panic.
Yeah. Which is great.
Yeah.
So I wonder, before you go, if you can talk a little bit about what you offer, because you offer some really good resources to parents.
Yes, I know how you feel because I've been there. So I created, and I worked with people for, over 20 years now, kids of all ages with anxiety. So I created this because there's people who can't come and meet with me. So I created an online program. It's like 20 plus videos for kids, videos for parents, videos for both. And handouts and articles on how to cure your kids' anxiety. So it's called Anxiety Free Kids. It's on my website. I also have like a 1-hour master class for parents to take about helping kids with anxiety. And, my book, You Want Anxiety Zero, I have a workbook. I do have a coloring book too. So I have a lot of resources on there. There's some meditations on my Anxiety Free Kids program for kids to help them like get those worries out of their head.
That's great.
And, and people really love it because it's like, they're like desperate. You're like, I don't know what to do. And I'm like, this is what you do. And they're like, okay. And then, and they're like, oh, let me schedule an appointment with you. And by the time they get to me, they're all better because they got the answers from the program,
Yeah, which is awesome.
Yeah.
So what's your website? Where can people find this?
It's jodiaman.com, JODIAMAN.com. You could find it. And if you go in the menu on the side, there's like anxiety help, and I'll list everything I got there. But I have tons of articles and videos like on YouTube and blogs. I've been blogging for 10 years. So there is so much information on there. Go and have a binge.
That's awesome. And what's your YouTube channel so that people?
It's Jodi Aman. Yeah, you could tag me.
Okay. Yeah.
In the video, just tag Jodi Aman. Yeah. So, yeah, and you could get to my channel.
Okay. So I will leave links to your website, your YouTube channel, and all your wonderful resources.
Thank you
so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
I love talking to you. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Oops.